She laughed at the novice human, right before the apex hunters backed down from him. The trade hub was one of the largest space stations in the known galaxy. It floated in the empty space between three major star systems, and ships from 100 different worlds came and went every single day. The station was shaped like a massive wheel, with long arms stretching out in every direction. Lights blinked on its surface like stars, and the hum of its engines could be felt through the floor no matter where you stood. Inside the station, the main concourse was always busy. Beings of every shape and size walked through the wide corridors. Some had scales, some had fur, some had hard shells like insects, and others looked like nothing that had ever existed on Earth. They were merchants and travelers, soldiers and diplomats, criminals and honest workers. The hub did not care who you were or where you came from. It only cared that you had money to spend and business to conduct. The air smelled like 1,000 different worlds mixed together. Food vendors sold strange meats and stranger vegetables. Mechanics shouted prices for ship repairs. Information brokers whispered secrets to anyone willing to pay. And through it all, the crowd moved like a living river, flowing around obstacles and filling every available space. It was into this chaos that walked on a Tuesday afternoon, station time. He did not look like much. That was the first thing anyone would notice about him. He was of average height for a human male, with brown hair that needed a cut and brown eyes that seemed tired. He wore a leather jacket that had seen better days, simple cargo pants with many pockets, and boots that were scuffed and worn. He carried a small pack over one shoulder, and he walked with the slow, unhurried pace of someone who had nowhere particular to be. To the experienced watchers who made their living studying the crowds, looked like a mark. He looked like fresh meat. He looked like someone who had wandered into the wrong part of the galaxy and would soon learn a very hard lesson about how the universe really worked. Was one of those watchers. She stood near the entrance to the main cantina, a place called the Void's Edge that served drinks strong enough to kill most species and food that was only slightly less dangerous. Was a reptilian species known throughout the galaxy for their cunning and their complete lack of what other species called mercy. Her scales were a beautiful shade of iridescent blue that shifted to purple when the light hit them just right. Her eyes were amber, with vertical pupils that could see in almost complete darkness. A forked tongue flicked out occasionally to taste the air, reading the chemical signatures of everyone who passed by. She had been in the information business for 30 years. She knew how to spot trouble, how to avoid it, and how to profit from it. And right now, she was spotting what she considered to be a very stupid human. Standing beside her was her partner and bodyguard. Was a species that looked like someone had taken a rhinoceros, given it tusks like a boar, covered it in gray armored skin, and then made it walk on two legs. He stood nearly 7 feet tall and weighed close to 400 pounds, most of it muscle. His face was not capable of many expressions, but the one it usually wore was something between a scowl and the look of someone who had just smelled something unpleasant. Was not smart, but he was loyal. And in the galaxy, loyalty was worth more than intelligence any day. "Look at that one," said, nodding toward as he walked past. "Another human who thinks the universe is a friendly place." Made a rumbling sound in his chest. "He does look soft." "Soft," agreed. "They all look soft. Humans are one of the species to reach the stars, you know. They have only been out here for about 200 years. They still think that diplomacy and trade agreements will protect them. They still believe that being nice to people will make people nice to them." "Foolish," said. "Very foolish." His tongue flicked out again, tasting the air in its direction. "He smells like ship recycled air and cheap food. Probably came in on one of the transport vessels. A tourist, maybe, or a worker looking for a job. Either way, he does not belong here." "Should we warn him?" asked. There was no real concern in his voice. It was more of a habit asking the question. They both knew the answer. Laughed. It was a hissing sound that made nearby beings glance over nervously. They were not known for their kindness, and a laughing usually meant someone was about to have a very bad day. Warn him about what? She asked. About the pickpockets who will empty his pockets before he reaches the market district. About the food vendors who will sell him something that will make him sick for a week. About the contract killers who use this station as their personal hunting ground. She shook her head, her scales catching the light. No, we do not warn him. He will learn or he will not. Either way, it is not our problem. We have enough problems of our own. That was true enough. The information business had been slow lately, and finances were not what they should be. She needed a big score soon, something that would set her up for a few months at least. She did not have time to worry about some lost human who would probably be dead or fleeing the station within the week. But even as she dismissed from her thoughts, she noticed something strange. He had stopped walking. The human had paused near one of the large viewports that lined the concourse. These windows looked out into space, showing the endless darkness and the distant stars and the constant flow of ships arriving and departing. Most beings walked past these windows without a second glance. They had seen space before. They had seen it every day of their lives. There was nothing special about it. But was staring out that window with an intensity that made curious despite herself. No, not staring at space. He was watching the reflections. Felt a small chill run down her spine. It was a tiny thing, barely noticeable, but her instincts had kept her alive for 3 decades in a business that killed most beings within the first 5 years. She trusted those instincts. And right now, those instincts were telling her that she might have made a mistake about this human. Was not watching space. He was using the viewport as a mirror, watching the crowd behind him without turning around. It was a trick that herself used all the time. It was a trick that professionals used. It was not a trick that soft tourists from safe worlds knew anything about. She watched more carefully now, her amber eyes narrowing. Turned away from the window and resumed walking. His pace was the same as before, slow and unhurried. His posture was the same, slightly slouched and unremarkable, but was watching closely now, and she saw the small differences. He was not walking randomly. He was walking with purpose, changing direction slightly every few steps. Each change brought him past a different part of the concourse, gave him a different angle on the crowd around him. He was scanning, searching, looking for something specific. Or looking for someone. Said quietly, "That human, watch him." "Why, you said he was nothing." "I may have been wrong. Watch him anyway." The big shrugged his massive shoulders but did as she asked. He had learned long ago that was usually right about these things, and when she was wrong, it was still better to be careful. Continued his strange, purposeful wandering through the concourse. He passed food stalls and equipment shops and the entrances to various entertainment districts. He passed groups of beings engaged in loud arguments and quiet conspiracies. He passed through pools of light and patches of shadow with equal comfort. And then he stopped again. This time he was looking at a particular section of the concourse. There was nothing obviously special about it. A few atmospheric processors hummed against one wall. A maintenance hatch was set into the floor. A pair of information kiosks blinked with scrolling advertisements. Standard station infrastructure. But was staring at it like he had found exactly what he was looking for. Followed his gaze and felt her blood run cold. She had missed it before. She had walked past that section of the concourse 100 times and never noticed. But now that she knew where to look, she saw her. A young female was hiding in the narrow gap between 2 of the atmospheric processors. She was small, barely more than a child by her species standards, were vaguely humanoid, with 4 arms, 4 eyes, and skin that ranged from pale green to deep emerald. This one had light green skin and wide, frightened eyes that were scanning the crowd with obvious terror. She was wearing a red jacket that was too big for her, probably borrowed or stolen. She was pressed so far back into the gap that she was almost invisible. Almost, but not quite, had found her. And was not the only one looking for her. His tongue flicked out, and this time she caught a scent that made her heart skip a beat. Owl. The owl were one of the most feared species in the galaxy. They were hunters, pure and simple. They had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill everything else, and they had risen to the top of that murderous food chain through a combination of natural weapons, incredible patience, and absolutely zero mercy. A full-grown owl stood 7 feet tall. Their bodies were long and lean, covered in plates of natural armor that could stop most handheld weapons. They had 4 arms ending in claws that could cut through steel. Their faces were nightmares of interlocking jaws and sensor pits that could detect heat, motion, and chemical signatures. They could run faster than most beings could drive. They could go without food for weeks. They could track a single individual across an entire planet. And they hunted in packs. Counted quickly. 1 near the entrance to the market district, 2 more by the docking bay access corridor, another near the lifts that led to the upper levels, 3 more scattered through the crowd, trying to look casual and failing miserably. 7 owl hunters, all of them moving slowly closer to the gap where the girl was hiding. Whispered urgently, "We need to leave now." "What, why?" "Owl hunting pack, 7 of them. They are here for someone, and I do not want to be anywhere nearby when they find their prey." His face went pale beneath his gray skin. They were a tough species, but even they knew better than to get involved with owl hunters. Who are they hunting? "Does it matter? We leave now." But did not move. She was watching. The human had seen the owl too. She was sure of it. His body language had changed just slightly. His shoulders had squared. His weight had shifted onto the balls of his feet. His hands, which had been hanging loosely at his sides, were now positioned differently, ready to move quickly. And he was walking toward the girl. Not away from her. Not toward the exits. Not toward the safety of the crowd. He was walking directly toward the hiding spot where the child was cowering, and directly into the path of 7 apex predators who had never failed to catch their prey. "Is he insane?" breathed. "He is human," said, as if that explained everything. In a way, it did. Reached the atmospheric processors and crouched down, putting himself at eye level with the gap where the girl was hiding. He said something that could not hear over the noise of the crowd. The girl shook her head violently, pressing herself further back into the shadows. Said something else. His voice was gentle, patient. He held out one hand, palm up, showing that he was not armed. The girl stared at that hand like it was either salvation or another trap. And then the owl closed in. They moved with the fluid grace of natural predators, covering the last few meters of distance in seconds. The crowd parted around them like water around rocks. Nobody wanted to be between an owl pack and whatever they were hunting. Nobody wanted to become collateral damage. The leader of the pack was the largest of the 7. His armor plates were darker than the others, almost black, and they shifted to deep purple as the light caught them. His jaws clicked together in a constant rhythm, a sound that knew was the owl equivalent of anticipation. He was looking forward to this kill. This was the Flayer. Knew the name. Everyone in the information business knew the name. Had been hunting across the galaxy for over 50 years. He had killed beings from nearly every sentient species. He had hunted on 100 different worlds in every possible environment, and he had never failed to bring down his prey. There were stories about the things he did to his prey before he let them die. Stories about how he liked to eat them while they were still alive, while they could still feel what was happening to them. Stories that made even the hardened criminals of the hub go pale and quiet. And this monster was now standing directly behind. "Step away from the female, warm blood," said. His voice was like broken glass being ground together. It was not designed for human language, and the words came out rough and jagged. "She belongs to us now." Stood slowly. He did not hurry. He did not panic. He simply rose to his feet and turned around to face the pack leader. Found herself holding her breath. She had seen many beings face Al over the years. She had seen soldiers and mercenaries and warriors from a dozen different species. Almost all of them had shown fear. Their bodies had betrayed them, pumping out the chemical signatures of terror that the Al could smell as easily as a human could see a red flag. That fear was like blood in the water to the hunters. It excited them. It made them eager for the kill. Showed no fear. His face was calm. His body was relaxed. His eyes met sensor pits without flinching. He looked thought like a man who had walked into this situation 1,000 times before and was not particularly impressed by it. She does not belong to anyone, said. His voice was quiet, but it carried clearly in the sudden silence that had fallen over this section of the concourse. She is a child. She belongs with her family. His jaws clicked faster. The other Al spread out behind him, forming a semicircle that cut off any possible escape. The message was clear. This human was not leaving until the pack allowed him to leave. The female is prey, said. Her family broke contract with powerful beings. They owe a debt that cannot be paid in credits. It must be paid in blood, in pain, in fear. His sensor pits flared as he tasted the air around. You are not part of this, warm blood. Walk away and you will live to see another day. Interfere and you will die beside her. The girl behind whimpered. It was a small sound, barely audible, but every Al in the pack heard it. Their heads turned toward the noise like compass needles finding north. The hunger in their eyes was unmistakable. Did not move. I said no, he repeated. The girl is not going anywhere with you. Leaned forward. He was close enough now that could smell him. The Al smelled like old blood and something chemical, something that triggered a primitive part of the human brain and screamed danger, predator, run. Do you know who I am, human? Asked. Should I? I am the Flayer. I have hunted on worlds that would kill you before you could take your first breath. I have killed beings that could destroy cities with a thought. I have eaten species that your kind has never even heard of. His jaws parted, revealing rows of teeth that looked like they had been designed by a nightmare. I have killed 53 humans in my life. They all begged. They all screamed. They all died slowly. Was silent for a moment, then he nodded slowly. 53, he said. That is a lot. It is nothing. Humans are easy prey, soft, fragile. No natural weapons, no armor, no venom. Your species should never have left your. The galaxy is no place for creatures as weak as you. You might be right, said. We are pretty soft. His jaws clicked in what might have been satisfaction. Then you understand. Step aside. Let us have the female. You can walk away from this with your life, warm blood. It is more than most beings get when they stand in my path. Shook his head slowly. I was not finished, he said. Behind him, the girl had stopped whimpering. She was staring at with all four eyes, and something had changed in her expression. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else now, something like hope. You are right that we are soft, continued. We have no claws, we have no fangs, we have no armor. We cannot see in the dark like your kind. We cannot run as fast. We cannot go as long without food or water. On paper, humans are one of the weakest species in the galaxy. He took a single step forward. The movement was small, barely noticeable. But somehow, impossibly, the entire pack shifted backward. It was an unconscious reaction, a ripple of movement that passed through all 7 hunters before they even realized what they were doing. Held his ground, but could see the confusion in his body language. The pack leader's sensor pits were flaring wildly, trying to process what they were detecting. Something was wrong. Something about this human did not match the threat assessment that millions of years of evolution had programmed into the Al brain. But here is the thing about humans, said. We know we are soft. We have always known. We grew up on a world where everything was trying to kill us. Predators that were bigger and faster and stronger. Diseases that could wipe out entire populations. Whether that could destroy cities. Natural disasters that could reshape continents. We survived all of that. Do you know how? Another step forward. Another unconscious step backward from the pack. We learned that we could not fight the way other species fight. We could not rely on claws or fangs or natural armor. So we made our own. We made tools, weapons, machines. We took the materials of our world and we turned them into things that could kill anything. His voice had changed. It was still quiet, but there was something beneath it now, something that made scales prickle with unease. It was the voice of someone who had seen things, done things, survived things that should have killed him. And we learned something else, said. We learned that being soft meant we had to be hard in other ways. We could not outlast our enemies physically, so we outlasted them mentally. We learned to plan, to wait, to watch, to strike when the moment was right and then disappear before anyone could strike back. He reached up and pulled down the collar of his jacket. Had to squint to see what he was revealing. There were scars on his shoulder and upper chest. Lots of them. White lines and puckered tissue that told stories of violence survived. Burns and cuts and wounds that should have killed any normal being. But it was not the scars that made stumble backward. It was the marks beneath them. They were burned into skin, permanent marks that could never be removed. They were arranged in neat rows, each one representing something specific. Numbers and symbols and what looked like species designations. Kill tallies. Al read aloud, his voice suddenly hollow. You have killed Al. 7 of them, said calmly. Over the years, different packs, different worlds, they all thought I was easy prey. They were wrong. The pack behind was shifting nervously now. Their claws were tucked close to their bodies, and their armor plates had flared into the defensive position that their species only adopted when they felt genuinely threatened. These were apex predators, beings that had spent their entire lives at the top of the food chain. They did not know how to be afraid. But they were learning. Sensor Pit scanned the other marks on skin. He said, Hive Warrior, Pack Hunter. His voice dropped to something that might have been a whisper. Battle Master, 3 of them. 4 actually, said. The registry missed one. Felt like she could not breathe. Were legendary warriors, one of the most dangerous species in known space. A single battle master could take on an entire squad of soldiers from most other species and win. The idea that a human, a single human, had killed 4 of them was impossible. Except this human was standing calmly in front of 7 Al hunters, and those hunters were backing away from him. What are you? Demanded. Let his collar fall back into place, hiding the marks once more. I am human, he said simply. That is all. No, shook his head, his jaws clicking in confusion and what might have been fear. No human is like this. No human smells like this. You have no fear scent. You have no prey response. My sensors are telling me that you are not a threat, but my instincts are telling me to run. Your instincts are smarter than your sensors, said. One of the pack members, a slightly smaller Al with lighter colored armor, spoke up. The scent. I know this scent. The old ones spoke of it, the ones from the breeding world wars. Be silent, commanded. But the pack member continued, his voice rising with something that sounded very much like panic. They called them the unrelenting, humans who would not stop, humans who kept coming no matter how many times you knocked them down. They said when you smelled this scent, when you found a human who had no fear, you ran. You ran and you did not stop running until you were light years away. I said be silent. The old ones said they were not prey, the pack member continued. They said they were predators wearing prey's skin. They said they would hunt you across the galaxy if you gave them reason. They said the only way to survive them was to never let them know you existed. Said nothing. He did not need to. The fear was spreading through the pack like a virus now. These were creatures who had never known what it meant to be afraid, and they were discovering it for the first time in their lives. Was the last holdout. The pack leader stood his ground, his jaws clicking in the rhythm that meant he was thinking, processing, trying to find a way out of this situation that did not involve losing face in front of his pack. "One human," he said finally. "You are one human, we are 7. Even if you are one of the unrelenting, you cannot fight us all." Smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. It was the kind of smile that a predator might make just before it pounced on its prey. It was a smile that said, "I was hoping you would say that." "Would you like to find out?" asked. The silence that followed was absolute. The crowd had backed away, creating a wide circle around the confrontation. Beings of every species were watching from a safe distance, recording the scene on their personal devices, whispering to each other in 100 different languages. A human was facing down a owl hunting pack. A human was making them afraid. This was the kind of story that would spread across the galaxy. This was the kind of story that would become legend. Made his decision. "Pack," he said, his voice tight with barely suppressed humiliation. "We are leaving." One of the hunters began. "Now." The pack leader turned and walked away. The other 6 hunters followed, their movements stiff and uncomfortable. They moved through the crowd like ghosts, beings that had been solid and terrifying moments ago but were now somehow diminished. The crowd parted for them, but the parting was different this time. Before, beings had moved out of fear. Now, they moved out of contempt. The mighty owl hunters had been faced down by a single human and had chosen to flee. That was not something that would ever be forgotten. When the pack was gone, disappearing through one of the docking bay access corridors, let out a slow breath. The tension seemed to drain from his body, and he was once again just a tired-looking man in a worn jacket. He turned back to the gap between the atmospheric processors. "It is safe now," he said gently. "You can come out." The girl stared at him for a long moment. Her 4 eyes were wide, and she was still trembling, but the terror in her expression was mixed with wonder now. She had just watched a miracle. Slowly, carefully, she crawled out of her hiding spot. She was small, barely reaching his waist, and the red jacket she wore was so big that the sleeves covered her hands completely. "Who are you?" she asked. Her voice was high and thin, the voice of a child who had just been through something terrible and was not sure if it was over yet. "My name is," he said. "I am just someone passing through. What is your name?" "Myra," she said. "Myra, my father was." Her voice broke, and tears began to stream down her green cheeks. Knelt down so that he was at her eye level. "I know," he said quietly. "I heard what the hunters said. There is a debt, a contract, but that is not your fault, Myra. None of this is your fault." "They killed everyone," Myra whispered. "All of our guards, everyone who worked for my father. They said they would find me no matter where I ran. They said they would make it hurt." "They were wrong," said firmly. "They are not going to hurt you. Not today, not ever, I promise." Myra looked at him with something like hope in her eyes. "How can you promise that? You are just one person, and they will come back. The owl always come back for their prey." "Not this time," said. "This time, they are going to leave this station, and they are going to tell whoever hired them that the contract is canceled. And they are going to spread the word that you are under my protection." "Why?" Myra asked. "Why would you help me? You do not even know me." Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "Because a long time ago, someone helped me when I had no one else. Someone stood between me and something terrible and said, 'Not today.' I never forgot that. And I swore that if I ever had the chance to do the same for someone else, I would take it." He stood up and held out his hand. "Come on," he said. "Let us find whatever family you have left. Let us get you somewhere safe." Myra hesitated for only a moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. As they walked toward the merchant quarter of the station, felt a presence fall into step beside them. He did not need to look to know who it was. The chemical signature of Scales was distinctive. "That was quite a display," said. Her voice was different now. The condescension and mockery were gone, replaced by something that might have been respect, or fear, or possibly both. "It was necessary," said without looking at her. Was it true? The things the pack member said about the unrelenting, are those stories real? Some of them. Was quiet for a moment, walking alongside them through the crowd. People looked at differently now. Word had already begun to spread. The man who had faced down the owl, the man who had made them run. "I called you a novice," said finally. "You did. I said you smelled like someone who had never faced real danger." "You did say that." Scales flushed a deeper shade of purple. For it was the equivalent of blushing with embarrassment. "I was wrong, very wrong." "Yes," agreed, "you were. The marks on your skin, the kill tallies, how many are there?" Was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was distant, as if he were looking at something far away that only he could see. "Enough," he said, "more than enough." They walked in silence after that, passing through the crowded corridors of the station. The hub continued to buzz with life around them, but moved through it like a stone in a river, solid and unmoved by the current. The merchant quarter was in the lower levels of the station, where rent was cheap and the lighting was dim. It was where beings went when they had run out of other options, when they were hiding from something or someone. Had never been to this particular station before, but he knew the merchant quarter. Every station had one. They were all the same. Myra led them through the narrow streets to a small shop tucked between a food vendor and a used parts dealer. The sign above the door was in a script that did not recognize, but Myra did not hesitate. She pushed through the door and disappeared inside, followed with close behind. The interior of the shop was dark and cluttered, filled with shelves of mysterious items that seemed to have been collected from 100 different worlds. Crystals and tools and pieces of technology that could not identify. And huddled in the back corner, surrounded by armed guards who looked like they were one wrong word away from shooting anyone who moved, was a group of. There were 5 of them, 2 adults, 2 teenagers, and an elderly female who was clearly the matriarch of the group. They looked up as the door opened, their weapons rising, and then Myra threw herself into the arms of the older female. "Grandmother," she cried. "Grandmother, I thought you were dead. They said everyone was dead." The elderly held her granddaughter tightly, her 4 eyes glistening with tears. "Myra, my brave girl, we thought we had lost you. When the hunters came, we could not find you. We thought," she broke off, unable to continue. One of the adults, a male with dark green skin and the hard eyes of someone who had seen too much death, stepped forward. His weapon was pointed directly at his chest. "Who are you?" he demanded. "How did you find us?" "I did not find you," said calmly. "I found her. The hunters had cornered her on the main concourse. I helped her escape." "Helped her escape from Al Hunters." This voice was flat with disbelief. "You expect me to believe that a human helped her escape from the flare?" "Believe what you want," said, "but the hunters are gone. They left the station and they are not coming back for your family." "Not coming back." They actually laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Al do not abandon their prey. It is against their nature. They will hunt us to the end of the galaxy if they have to." "Not this time," spoke up. Everyone turned to look at her and she met their gazes without flinching. "I saw it happen. The human faced down the entire pack. He made them back down. I have never seen anything like it in 30 years of working these stations." They stared at with new eyes. "Is this true?" "It is true," Myra said, pulling away from her grandmother to look at her uncle. "He saved me, Uncle Prex. He stood between me and the hunters and he did not run. He was not even afraid." Prex lowered his weapon slowly. His expression was still suspicious, but there was something else there now, something like hope. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you help us? We have nothing to offer you. We are refugees now, running from a debt we cannot pay. Everything we had is gone." Was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to answer. He could tell them the truth, he supposed. He could tell them about the years he had spent wandering from station to station, looking for something that he could not name. He could tell them about the things he had done and the things that had been done to him. He could tell them about the emptiness inside him that could only be filled, temporarily, by helping others. But they did not need to hear all of that. They needed something simpler, something they could understand. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally. "Because your niece was in trouble and I could help, that is reason enough." The elderly stepped forward, gently moving past her son. She was small and old, but there was a dignity in her bearing that commanded respect. "You are one of the unrelenting," she said. It was not a question. Hesitated. "I am human," he said. "That is all." "I have heard the stories," the old female continued. "All have heard them. They say that when humanity first came to the stars, they were weak and soft, and everyone thought they would be easy prey. They say that the galaxy learned otherwise. They say that humans have a capacity for survival that no other species can match." She reached out and took one of his hands in both of hers. Her grip was surprisingly strong for someone so old. "They say that when a human decides to protect something, nothing in the galaxy can stop them. Not hunger, not pain, not fear, not death itself." Her 4 eyes met his 2. "I see that now. I see it in you." Did not know what to say to that. He had never thought of himself as particularly special. He was just a man who had learned to survive in a universe that was constantly trying to kill him. He had made mistakes along the way. He had done things he was not proud of. He was not a hero. But maybe, he thought, heroism was not about being special. Maybe it was just about making the choice to do what was right, even when it was hard, even when it was dangerous, even when everyone expected you to walk away. "Thank you," the old female said. "Whatever happens now, thank you." Nodded. "You should leave the station," he said. "The owl may have backed down, but whoever hired them is still out there. They will find another way to collect the debt they think you owe." "We have no money," Prex said. "No ship. We barely escaped with our lives." "There are human settlements in the outer colonies," said. "They do not ask questions about where you came from or what you did before. They only care about whether you can work and whether you can be trusted. I can give you coordinates." "Why would they accept us?" Prex asked. "We are not human." Smiled slightly. "The outer colonies accept everyone. That is the point. Most of the people there are running from something too. They understand." He reached into his pack and pulled out a small data chip. "Take this. It has the coordinates and an access code that will let you pass their security. Tell them sent you. They will know what that means." Prex took the chip, looking at it like it was the most valuable thing he had ever held. "I do not know what to say." "Say nothing. Just take care of your family, keep them safe. That is all I ask." Turned to leave, but Myra caught his hand. "Will I see you again?" she asked. He looked down at her young face, at the hope and the fear and the gratitude all mixed together. "Maybe," he said. "The galaxy is big, but it is also small. Our paths might cross again someday." "I will remember you," Myra said firmly. "Forever. I will tell my children and my children's children about the human who saved me from the hunters." Felt something twist in his chest. It was an unfamiliar feeling, something he had not experienced in a very long time. "I hope your story has a happy ending, Myra," he said softly. "I hope you get to grow up and have those children and tell them all the stories you want." He gently pulled his hand free and walked out of the shop, leaving the family behind. Followed him. They walked in silence through the merchant quarter, back toward the main concourse. The crowds were thinner here, the lighting dimmer. It was the kind of place where shadows had shadows and everyone minded their own business. "That data chip," said eventually. "Those coordinates you gave them, do they really lead to a safe place?" "Yes," said. "And the access code?" "It is my personal code. It will guarantee their safety." Was quiet for a moment, processing this. You have that kind of influence in the outer colonies. I have friends there, said. People who owe me. People who trust me. When I give someone my code, it means they are under my protection. And my friends take that seriously. You are not what I expected, admitted. When I first saw you, I thought you were just another lost human, a tourist who had wandered into the wrong part of the galaxy. I thought you would be dead within the week. A lot of people think that about me, said. Sometimes I think they are right. Sometimes I expect to die, and I wake up the next morning surprised to still be breathing. Is that what it means to be unrelenting? Asked. To not die when you should. Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. Do you know why humans develop persistence hunting? He asked. Shook her head. Millions of years ago, back on Earth, our ancestors were not very dangerous. We were small and weak, without claws or fangs or armor, but we could do something that almost no other species on our planet could do. We could sweat. Sweat, repeated confused. It is a cooling mechanism. Most species on Earth cooled themselves by panting, which meant they had to stop moving to bring their body temperature down. But humans could sweat while we ran. We could keep moving even as we were cooling off. It meant we could run for longer than anything else on our planet. They emerged from the merchant quarter into the main concourse. The crowd here was thicker, the lights brighter, the noise louder, but's voice cut through it all. Our ancestors learned to hunt by simply following their prey, not catching them, not fighting them, just following, hour after hour, day after day. The prey would run and hide thinking they had escaped, and then we would appear again, always following, never stopping, never giving up. He looked at with those tired brown eyes, and she saw something ancient in them, something that had been passed down through millions of years of evolution, something that had kept humanity alive when everything else had tried to kill them. Eventually, the prey would collapse from exhaustion. They would simply run until they could not run anymore, and then we would catch them. They were faster than us. They were stronger than us, but we were patient. We were relentless. We just kept coming. His voice hardened slightly. That is what it means to be human. That is what the galaxy does not understand about us. You can beat us. You can hurt us. You can kill us by the millions, but you cannot make us give up. You cannot make us stop trying, because we have been fighting impossible odds since before we could walk upright, and we have always found a way to win. Felt something she had not felt in a very long time. It took her a moment to recognize it. She was standing next to a representative of a species that had conquered it through sheer stubbornness. A species that had looked at the universe and said, "We belong here, and you cannot stop us." A species that had faced every challenge the galaxy could throw at them and kept moving forward. "I think I understand," she said slowly, "why the owl were afraid." "They were not afraid of me," said. "Not really. They were afraid of what I represent. They were afraid that if they fought me, if they killed me, it would not end there. Other humans would come, more of the unrelenting, and they would keep coming until the owl were destroyed. Not because humans are vengeful, but because we do not know how to stop." They reached the cantina, the void's edge, and paused at the entrance. "This is where I was headed when this whole thing started," he said. "A meal and a quiet corner, that is all I wanted." Laughed. It was a genuine sound this time, not the mocking hiss from before. "I think you earned it," she said. "Let me buy you that meal. Consider it an apology for calling you a novice." Thought about it for a moment, then nodded. "All right," he said, "but if the food kills me, I am going to be very disappointed." They walked into the cantina together. The interior was dark and smoky, filled with beings from across the galaxy. Music played from hidden speakers, a strange blend of electronic sounds and alien instruments. The bar was a long curve of polished metal, and the tables were scattered around a central pit where creatures fought for the entertainment of the patrons. Found a table in the corner, away from the noise and the crowds. sat across from him, and ordered drinks from a passing server. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now I eat my meal and I rest for a while," said. "Tomorrow I will find a ship heading toward the outer colonies and I will move on." Just like that, you face down one of the most dangerous hunting packs in the galaxy. You save a child's life. You upend everything I thought I knew about humans, and then you just move on. "What else would I do?" asked. "Stay here and become famous. Build a statue in my honor. That is not who I am. I am just a traveler. I help when I can and I leave when I am done. There is no grand plan. There is no ultimate goal. There is just the next day and the next problem and the hope that I can make a small difference before I run out of time." The drinks arrived, something amber and potent that burned on the way down. Took a long sip, letting the warmth spread through her body. "You are a strange being," she said. "So I have been told. The owl will spread word of what happened here. The Pax will know that an unrelenting walks the stars. It will change things. It will make other predators think twice before hunting humans." "Maybe," said, "or maybe they will see it as a challenge. Maybe they will come looking for me, trying to prove that they are better than." That is the problem with reputation. It protects you from some threats while attracting others. "And if they come, if more hunters decide to test themselves against you." Took a sip of his drink and set it down carefully. "Then they will learn the same lesson learned," he said. "They will learn that humans are not prey. We never were. We just let them think so for a while, but that time is over." He looked at, and for just a moment she saw the predator behind his tired eyes. The hunter who had killed Al and things she could not even name. The survivor who had endured everything the galaxy could throw at him and kept walking. "We are not prey," repeated softly, and it is time the galaxy remembered that. Outside the cantina, in the endless corridors of the hub, word continued to spread. A human had faced down a Al hunting pack. An unrelenting still walked among the stars. The stories traveled from ship to ship, from world to world, growing in the telling. Some said the human had killed half the pack before they fled. Some said he had powers beyond normal human ability. Some said he was not human at all but something else wearing human skin. But the core of the story remained the same. A single human had stood against apex predators and had not backed down. And the predators had run. In the dark places of the galaxy, where hunters gathered and predators schemed, that story landed like a stone in still water. Ripples spread outward, touching ancient fears and older memories. The unrelenting. They had thought those days were over. They had thought humanity had softened, had become civilized, had lost its edge. They had thought they could hunt humans the way they hunted everything else. They were wrong. And in a corner of a cantina on a station between the stars, finished his meal and wondered where the galaxy would take him next. He did not know the answer. He never did. He just kept moving, kept surviving, kept helping where he could. That was what humans did. That was what humans had always done. And that was what humans would continue to do until the stars themselves burned out and the universe fell into silence. Because humanity did not know how to give up. It was not in their nature. It had never been. And it never would be.